Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Gates channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. The week opened with the Dupree family already moving at full speed, and Anita wasted no time throwing herself back into business as she worked through an endless list of responsibilities that had been waiting for her return. There was a renewed sense of purpose surrounding her, but even in the middle of that productivity, family remained the center of every conversation. Anita and Vernon happily shared the news with Nicole that Kat had officially purchased a condominium, a milestone that it was represented another step toward building a future on her own terms. Before long, Nicole found Kat, and the conversation naturally shifted from celebration to concern as Kat explained that Bill had possibly suffered a stroke. Nicole listened carefully before gently steering the discussion toward Thomas, encouraging her daughter to recognize that allowing him to pay rent wasn't a sign of weakness, but a healthy, practical arrangement that benefited them both. At nearly the same time, Vernon revealed that he had been offered the opportunity to mentor a new generation of political candidates, a role that immediately reignited his passion for public service. Anita saw the excitement in her husband's eyes and wholeheartedly encouraged him to accept, believing that his experience and wisdom deserved to be passed on to those preparing to shape the future. Elsewhere, Chelsea carried the weight of regret after realizing that she had crossed a line with Kat. She sincerely apologized for using Kat's transplant experience as a way to market their products, admitting that what she had done lacked sensitivity and respect for everything Kat had endured. Hoping to make things right, Chelsea suggested that Kat share her powerful journey through the Chelsea Kat social media platforms, believing her story could inspire countless women, particularly Black women who often lacked awareness about the importance of early detection and organ donation. Kat appreciated the intention behind the idea, but quietly admitted that she wasn't ready to place herself in such a public spotlight. She encouraged Chelsea to continue spreading awareness using their platform, but asked to remain out of the campaign herself, choosing privacy over publicity despite knowing how meaningful her voice could be. Chelsea wasn't ready to abandon the concept entirely and floated another possibility, imagining Kat and Eva sharing their intertwined experiences together, but the suggestion landed poorly. Kat made it abundantly clear that she had no interest in participating alongside Eva, though she reluctantly gave Chelsea permission to reach out to Eva independently if she wished to tell her own side of the story. Before the conversation could move on, another troubling update arrived when Chelsea learned that Bill had been rushed back to the hospital. Bill's trip to the hospital happened against his will, and he resisted every step of the way, insisting with stubborn confidence that everyone was overreacting. He repeatedly argued that he hadn't suffered a stroke, and the initial examinations ultimately proved him right, but that did little to calm Madison's concerns. She remained determined to keep him hospitalized long enough to perform a complete series of blood tests, wanting to investigate the abnormal readings that continued to raise questions about his health. Haley desperately pushed for his release, hoping to get him home before additional testing uncovered anything unexpected, but the medical staff refused to budge. Bill grew increasingly frustrated as everyone around him, from Madison to his own family, placed his well-being above his demands. For perhaps the first time in a long while, even his commanding personality wasn't enough to overpower the people determined to protect him from himself. Back at home, another emotional storm unfolded between Danny and Andre as unresolved feelings continued to surface. Andre couldn't stop thinking about the women he had recently photographed, cancer survivors who proudly displayed their mastectomy scars as symbols of survival instead of defeat. Their strength had deeply inspired him, but Danny wasn't ready to hear comparisons no matter how well-intentioned they were. She reminded him that she wasn't a cancer patient, at least not yet, and admitted that one of her greatest fears was watching the way her husband saw her begin to change. Andre insisted that nothing about his love had shifted, but Danny challenged him with painful honesty, asking why he hadn't touched her since she walked through the front door. Realizing the silent distance he had unintentionally created, Andre closed that gap immediately, embracing her with tenderness that words alone could never communicate. Yet, despite the affection they tried to rediscover, uncertainty still lingered quietly between them, refusing to disappear completely. Not long afterward, Naomi called her mother with unexpected news about Bill's hospitalization. Danny listened carefully as Naomi explained everything that had happened, asking only that her daughter continue keeping her informed instead of rushing to Bill's bedside herself. After ending the call, Danny turned back toward Andre and quietly admitted that, for once, she truly believed she was exactly where she needed to be. The couple attempted to reconnect physically, hoping intimacy might silence the emotional noise surrounding them. But their hearts and bodies never quite found the same rhythm. Their love remained genuine, yet the invisible weight each carried kept pulling them slightly out of step, creating an intimacy filled as much with vulnerability as passion. The following day began with a different energy as Danny and Andre finally managed to reconnect in a way that felt genuine and healing. For a brief moment, the outside world disappeared, allowing them to rediscover the comfort they had nearly lost. Reality inevitably returned, however, when Andre left to meet his Uncle Ted for drinks at the country club. The two men settled into an honest conversation about the complicated women they loved, exchanging observations, frustrations, and quiet admiration that only family could understand. Meanwhile, Nicole paid Danny an unexpected visit and couldn't hide her surprise that Danny had resisted the urge to race to Bill's hospital room. Danny presented herself as someone finally learning to establish healthy emotional boundaries, insisting that Bill had a wife capable of caring for him and that Haley should shoulder those responsibilities instead. Nicole left believing Danny had finally turned a corner, unaware that the situation remained far more complicated beneath the surface. The moment Nicole departed, Chelsea called with another update that immediately weakened Danny's emotional resolve. Bill would have to remain in the hospital overnight while Madison completed even more testing, and Bill himself continued arguing with anyone who stood between him and the exit. Madison refused to compromise, joined by Chelsea, Naomi, and even Haley, all of whom insisted that Bill stay exactly where he was until every concern had been addressed. Eventually, Bill reluctantly surrendered to their demands, though not without making his frustration abundantly clear. Despite everything she had said earlier about maintaining distance, Danny could no longer ignore the pull she still felt toward him. She quietly made her way to the hospital, and the instant Bill saw her standing in the doorway, genuine happiness spread across his face. Haley had stepped away briefly to gather a few belongings, giving Danny precious moments alone beside Bill's bed before she silently slipped away the second Haley returned, leaving behind another encounter filled with emotions neither of them seemed capable of escaping. While Bill's complicated relationships continued unfolding inside the hospital, another surprise waited elsewhere. Ted crossed paths with Thomas following his drinks with Andre and found the young man still embarrassed after Kat had publicly rejected his marriage proposal in front of the Dupree family. Ted attempted to reassure him that one painful rejection didn't define his worth, but Tomas unexpectedly revealed something that left Ted speechless. He explained that Kat had purchased the condominium for him before quickly correcting himself, clarifying that the gesture reflected Kat's desire for them to build a life together under one roof. Ted struggled to process the revelation, stunned by how deeply his daughter had invested herself emotionally, despite turning down the proposal itself. Elsewhere, Shanice, Madison, Ashley, and Nicole gathered for an honest conversation about their tangled romantic lives, while tensions exploded inside Bill's law office after Thomas discovered Naomi sitting behind Bill's desk. Having been asked by Bill to oversee the office during his absence, Naomi believed she was simply fulfilling his wishes, but Thomas viewed the scene as another painful reminder that family connections would always outrank professional ambition, and the confrontation between them quickly became impossible to ignore. As the week pushed forward, long-buried fears and carefully guarded secrets finally began surfacing, forcing the Dupree family to confront truths that could no longer remain hidden. Naomi gathered her courage before sitting down with Chelsea, Martin, and Kat, knowing that the conversation ahead would permanently change the way they looked at both her future and their own. With visible emotion in her voice, she finally revealed that she had tested positive for the BRCA gene, the devastating result she had been carrying in silence for far too long. The room seemed to stand still as the weight of her confession settled over everyone present, replacing ordinary conversation with stunned disbelief. Chelsea was the first to react, unable to understand why Naomi had chosen to shoulder such a frightening burden alone instead of leaning on the people who loved her most. She was hurt not only because Naomi had hidden the truth from her sisters and cousins, but because she had kept Jacob in the dark as well. Naomi quietly explained that she had needed time and space to process the diagnosis before she was emotionally ready to share it, while Martin and Kat responded with gentle compassion, standing beside her without judgment. Chelsea eventually softened, but the pain of being excluded lingered, reminding everyone that even the deepest love could sometimes be tested by silence. Elsewhere, another family found itself revisiting painful memories that had once threatened to tear it apart. Smitty and Martin reflected on the darkest chapter of their marriage, a period marked by fear, guilt, and emotional distance, after Martin finally confessed that he had killed a man during the traumatic incident in which both he and Vernon had been targeted. The memory still carried enormous emotional weight, and neither of them could pretend those scars had completely healed. Before facing Martin directly, Smitty sought comfort in a conversation with Andre, sharing the lingering doubts that still haunted him despite all the progress they had made. Andre, understanding the importance of honest communication, later spoke with Martin himself, encouraging him to continue choosing openness over silence. By the end of the day, Smitty and Martin found themselves together once again, looking back not to reopen old wounds, but to recognize how far they had come. Their quiet reunion wasn't built on dramatic declarations, but on mutual understanding, forgiveness, and the realization that surviving hardship together had made their bond stronger than either of them ever imagined. Confessions seemed to echo throughout the city that day, and Danny found herself making one of her own when she sat down with Pamela. Unable to keep the secret bottled up any longer, Danny admitted that she and Bill had shared a passionate encounter inside an elevator during the tornado, a moment neither of them had planned, yet neither had been able to resist. Pamela absorbed the revelation with a mixture of disbelief, sarcasm, loyalty, and tough love that only a true friend could deliver. She questioned Danny's choices while simultaneously admitting that perhaps such an explosive reunion had been inevitable given the history they shared. Danny listened as Pamela challenged her to think beyond passion and consider the emotional consequences that continued to ripple through every corner of her life. Although the conversation was filled with humor at times, the underlying message remained painfully clear. Old feelings never truly disappear, and pretending otherwise only makes the eventual reckoning even more painful. Meanwhile, another confrontation quietly approached as Deanna prepared herself for an evening she had been anticipating for quite some time. Alone before dinner, she rehearsed exactly how she intended to confront Joey, imagining every possible response and mentally preparing herself to expose him once and for all. Yet as the hours passed, cooler judgment prevailed, and she decided that rushing into battle without all the facts would only weaken her position. When Joey and Vanessa finally arrived to join Deanna and Donald for dinner, the atmosphere immediately became charged with invisible tension. Every glance between Joey and Deanna carried hidden meaning. Every carefully chosen word felt like part of a much larger chess match, and each silently searched for an opening the other refused to give. Joey maintained his composure with practiced confidence, while Deanna matched him with remarkable restraint, refusing to reveal how much she truly suspected. Vanessa, blissfully unaware of the psychological duel unfolding across the table, believed the evening had been an overwhelming success, completely missing the storm raging beneath the surface. Once the gathering ended and she found herself alone outside, Deanna's carefully controlled emotions finally collapsed, and she once again spoke to the man she called her father, revealing that the burden she carried remained as heavy as ever. Across town, Bill wasted little time returning to work, despite the alarming health scare that had nearly landed him in far more serious condition. Haley discovered him completely absorbed in business, dismissing every attempt to slow down or prioritize his recovery. Frustrated by his refusal to rest, she scheduled herself a spa appointment and left him to his own stubbornness. Once alone, Bill immediately turned his attention toward Thomas, firmly reminding him that Naomi was acting under his direct authority and that Thomas would simply have to accept reporting to her. Thomas didn't hide his resentment, arguing that he had worked tirelessly to climb the professional ladder while others advanced because of family connections he could never compete with. During the heated exchange, he also informed Bill that Kat had rejected his marriage proposal, a revelation that added another layer of disappointment to an already difficult week. Bill absorbed the news with interest, but before either man could dwell on it for long, the demands of business once again took center stage. Elsewhere, Andre quietly reassured Danny that despite everything they had faced together, he never took their marriage for granted. His words carried sincerity that Danny desperately needed to hear, offering a brief moment of emotional stability amid the chaos surrounding them. At Orphe Jeans, Haley unexpectedly crossed paths with Smitty, who skillfully steered the conversation toward Lynette Wise, hoping to gather information without revealing his true intentions. Haley answered carefully, giving away only enough to satisfy casual curiosity while remaining guarded about everything else. Later, she encountered Naomi, Chelsea, and Kat at the country club, but instead of a friendly exchange, she found herself facing open criticism. The three women couldn't understand why Bill had been left working himself into exhaustion after his frightening hospital stay, while Haley spent time focusing on herself instead. Their disappointment quickly transformed into judgment, leaving Haley isolated once again as she struggled to defend choices no one else seemed willing to understand. By Friday, emotional fault lines were cracking open all across Fairmont Crest, beginning with Leslie's unexpected visit to Eva's apartment. Ted happened to be there when Leslie arrived, and it immediately became obvious that she already knew she would find him. She greeted her beloved Teddy with unmistakably flirtatious energy, hoping to rekindle something that Ted had no interest in revisiting. Ted firmly shut down every advance before leaving for work, making his position unmistakably clear. Eva, however, had reached her breaking point. Furious over her mother's continued interference, she confronted Leslie with heartbreaking honesty, insisting that she would not allow anyone, not even her own mother, to destroy the fragile relationship she was finally building with her father. With emotions running high, Eva demanded that Leslie leave, making it clear that enough was enough. Ted carried the emotional aftermath of that confrontation with him to the hospital, where he confided in Shanice about everything that had happened. Their conversation gradually shifted away from the chaos surrounding Leslie and towards something much more hopeful. As they spent quiet time together, Ted opened his heart completely and admitted that he was falling in love with Shanice. His confession brought warmth to a day otherwise filled with conflict, offering both of them a glimpse of happiness that felt genuine and well-deserved. Meanwhile, Danny, Chelsea, and Kat gathered once again at the country club, where Chelsea continued struggling with Naomi's decision to hide her positive BRCA test results. The conversation soon turned toward Haley after Chelsea and Kat learned she had chosen to get a facial instead of remaining by Bill's side during his recovery. Their frustration only deepened Danny's already complicated feelings toward both Bill and the woman who had become his wife. The rest of the day unfolded like a chain reaction of emotional collisions. Danny and Haley found themselves locked in another fiery confrontation that quickly escalated until Danny boldly implied that no matter what happened, Bill would never truly get over her. At the law office, Bill and Kat engaged in their own heated clash as he defended Haley while criticizing the Dupree women for refusing to give his wife even the slightest bit of grace. Later, Bill arrived unannounced at Danny's home and reminded her that he had successfully kept their recent elevator encounter a secret, suggesting there was no reason future encounters couldn't remain hidden as well. Danny firmly insisted that sleeping together again would never happen, but Bill interpreted her resistance as denial rather than conviction, convinced that the connection between them remained far from over. Yet perhaps the fiercest confrontation of all erupted when Leslie approached Haley with another proposal that they work together. Haley rejected the idea once again without hesitation, and the disagreement quickly turned bitter, leaving Leslie with a brand new enemy and another score she fully intended to settle. Even amid the endless conflict, a handful of quieter moments reminded everyone that hope still existed. Chelsea and Madison shared meaningful time together, strengthening the friendship that had become increasingly important to both of them. In another unexpected gesture, Kat visited Ava to personally thank her for what she had said to Thomas regarding the failed proposal. Their conversation remained warm and respectful, offering a rare moment of peace between two women whose complicated history still cast a long shadow over every interaction. Both acknowledged that their growing mutual respect did not erase everything that had happened between them, nor did it suddenly make them sisters in any emotional sense. Still, for one brief conversation, resentment gave way to understanding, proving that even the deepest wounds sometimes allow room for small steps toward healing. And as the week came to a close, it became clear that every secret revealed, every confrontation endured, and every fragile reconciliation had only set the stage for even greater drama waiting just over the horizon.